My name is Liam. I'm 27 years old, and I hadn't dated anyone in 3 years. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid. 3 years ago, my ex-girlfriend said something that broke me. She told me my appearance wasn't good enough, that being seen with me embarrassed her. Those words destroyed my confidence. Since then, I became a shut-in. I worked from home as a freelance designer. I avoided people. I avoided social events. I even avoided looking at myself in mirrors. I told myself I was fine being alone, but deep down, I was just scared of being rejected again. Then one day, my best friend Ethan barged into my apartment. "Dude, you need to get out," he said. "I'm setting you up on a blind date." I immediately refused. But Ethan shoved his phone in my face. On the screen was a photo of a girl named Mira. She had soft eyes, a warm smile, perfect skin, the kind of face you see in magazines. "She's sweet, smart, and she actually agreed to meet you," Ethan said. I stared at the photo. For the first time in years, I felt something. Hope, maybe. "Fine," I said. "I'll go." The next Saturday, I walked into a small coffee shop downtown. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding. I sat at a table near the window and waited. Then I noticed her. A girl wearing a surgical mask, pacing back and forth near the entrance. She kept glancing at me, then looking away. Finally, she walked up to my table. "Are you Liam?" she asked softly. I nodded. She sat down, her hands were trembling. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she took a deep breath. "Before we start, I need to show you something," she whispered. She reached up and slowly pulled down her mask. The right side of her face was beautiful, exactly like the photo, but the left side was covered in deep, twisted burn scars. The skin was rough, discolored, stretching from her cheek to her temple. I froze. She looked at me with fear and sadness in her eyes. "This is me," she said quietly. "The real me. The photo was taken before my accident." Her voice cracked. "If you want to leave, I understand." I sat there, unable to move. My mind was racing. Ethan never told me. He never warned me about this. He hid it on purpose. And now I had to make a choice. Stay and face something I wasn't prepared for, or walk away like everyone else probably did. The silence between us grew heavier. She was waiting for my answer, waiting for me to reject her, just like my ex rejected me. In that moment, I realized something. We were both broken by the people who were supposed to care about us, both judged for how we looked, both afraid of being hurt again. I looked into her eyes, and I made my decision. I didn't leave. I stayed in my seat and looked at her. "I'm staying," I said. Mira's eyes widened. She looked shocked, like she couldn't believe what she just heard. You're staying?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yeah, I am." She sat back down slowly, still trembling. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. The silence felt heavy, awkward. Then I spoke. "I'm angry at Ethan," I admitted. "He should have told me the truth. He had no right to hide something this important from me." Mira looked down at her hands. "I asked him not to tell you," she said quietly. "The photo he sent, it's from before the accident. It's who I used to be." She paused. "I wanted someone to talk to the real me first, to know who I am before they saw this." She touched her scarred cheek gently. "Everyone sees the scars first. Then they make their decision. They decide I'm not worth knowing, not worth their time." Her voice was so sad, so tired, like she'd been through this 100 times before. I understood that feeling more than she knew. "I get it," I said. "My ex left me because of how I looked too. She told me I wasn't attractive enough, that I embarrassed her in public." Mira looked up at me, surprised. "Really?" I nodded. "Yeah. It destroyed my confidence. I haven't dated anyone since. I've barely left my apartment in 3 years." Something shifted between us then. A real connection. An understanding that went deeper than words. We both knew what it felt like to be judged for something we couldn't control. To be rejected. To feel worthless because of how we looked. The conversation started flowing naturally after that. We talked about art. She told me she loved painting landscapes. I told her about my design work, like how I spent hours perfecting tiny details no one else noticed. We talked about books, about movies, about music. Mira was smart. She was thoughtful. She had a quiet sense of humor that caught me off guard and made me genuinely smile. When she laughed, she instinctively covered her scarred side with her hand, like she was trying to hide it, protect herself. But I could see her eyes, and they were expressive and kind. 2 full hours passed without me even noticing the time. When we finally left the coffee shop, the sun was setting. Mira stopped outside and turned to me. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not leaving, for staying. Most people don't." I looked at her directly. "I'm not most people." She smiled then, just a little, but it was genuine, real. As I walked home that evening, I realized something important. During our entire conversation, I didn't think about her scars once. I only thought about her, the person she was. Would you stay if you were him? Comment yes or no. We started texting every night after that first date. Mira would send me photos of her paintings. I'd send her terrible jokes that made me laugh. She made me laugh. I made her feel seen. But I noticed something. She always avoided crowded places. She'd only meet me early in the morning or late at night when fewer people were around. She never wanted to go to restaurants during busy hours. Never wanted to walk through crowded parks. I understood why, but it made me sad for her. One evening, about 2 weeks later, she invited me to her apartment. I was nervous, excited. This felt important. When I walked in, I was immediately struck by how warm her space felt. The walls were covered with paintings, dozens of them. Landscapes of mountains and forests, portraits of strangers, abstract pieces in deep blues and burning reds. "You painted all of these?" I asked. She nodded. "Art is the only thing that makes sense to me anymore. When I paint, I forget everything else." I studied each one carefully. She was incredibly talented. Then I noticed one painting near the window that was different. Half of it was burned. The canvas was charred black, the paint melted and twisted, but the other half showed a beautiful young girl smiling. "What happened to this one?" I asked carefully. Mira went completely quiet. She walked over and stared at it for a long time. "That's from the night it happened," she finally said. Her voice was barely audible. I waited. I didn't push. She took a shaky breath. I was 17. It was late at night, around 2 a.m. I woke up to smoke filling my room. Her voice became flat, distant. The house was on fire. My little sister was screaming from her bedroom upstairs. She paused. I ran through the smoke to get to her. The heat was unbearable. I pulled her out of her room. We were almost to the stairs when she touched her scarred face. A burning beam fell from the ceiling. It landed right here. Her voice cracked. "Third-degree burns. The doctors said I was lucky to survive, lucky to still have my eye." "Your sister?" I asked gently. "She's fine. She didn't get hurt at all. Not even a scratch." Mira's eyes filled with tears. "But my boyfriend at the time visited me once in the hospital. Just once. He looked at me with disgust." She wiped her eyes angrily. "He said, 'I don't want to be seen next to a face like that.' Then he left." Her whole body was shaking. After that, I stopped believing anyone would ever love me. I didn't know what to say. Words felt useless, so I walked closer and stood beside her. "You saved your sister's life," I said quietly. "That's not something to be ashamed of." Mira looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "But look at what it cost me." I wanted to hug her, to tell her she was beautiful, but I knew she wouldn't believe me yet. After that night, something changed between us. We started spending more time together, almost every day. I'd come over to her apartment and we'd cook dinner together. Simple meals, pasta, stir fry, homemade pizza. Nothing fancy, but it felt perfect. We'd watch movies on her couch, old classics she loved, comedies that made us both laugh until our sides hurt. Sometimes we'd go shopping for art supplies early in the morning when the stores were practically empty. Just the two of us wandering the aisles comparing brushes and paints. Mira started opening up more. She smiled more often. She laughed without immediately covering her face as much. I noticed small changes, good changes, beautiful changes. She'd let me see her without her mask on more freely. She'd make eye contact longer. She'd relax when we were together. One evening, we were sitting on her couch watching an old romantic comedy. Without thinking, I reached over and gently touched the scarred side of her face. She froze instantly. I realized what I'd done and started to pull my hand back, but she didn't move away. "Does it hurt?" I asked softly. She looked at me with wide, surprised eyes. "Vulnerable, exposed. No," she whispered. "Not anymore. Not physically." Then she said something that absolutely broke my heart. "You're the first person who's ever dared to touch it. Everyone else acts like it's contagious, like they'll catch something if they get too close." I left my hand there for a moment longer. She leaned into my touch slightly. After that night, she started trusting me even more deeply. She told me about her past, about the difficult years after the accident, how she dropped out of school halfway through senior year because people stared at her in the hallways, whispered behind her back, how she'd stopped going to family gatherings because even her own relatives would look uncomfortable around her. They'd whisper about her when they thought she couldn't hear. How she'd spent entire weeks locked inside her apartment, too afraid to face the outside world and the judgment that came with it. "I used to be so outgoing," she said one night while we were cleaning up after dinner. "I had so many friends. I loved parties. I loved being around people." She looked down at her hands, which were gripping a dish towel tightly. "Now I'm terrified every single time someone looks at me. I automatically assume they're disgusted, that they're judging me, that they wish I'd go away." "I don't judge you," I said firmly. She looked at me with tears building in her eyes. "I know. That's exactly why I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that eventually you'll wake up and realize you deserve better, that you'll leave like everyone else did, like he did." I took her hand in mine. "I'm not going anywhere, Mira." She squeezed my hand tightly, desperately, like she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. We sat there in silence for a long time, but it wasn't uncomfortable silence. It felt safe, warm, real. For the first time in years, both of us felt like we weren't alone anymore. One Saturday afternoon, I suggested something I'd been thinking about for weeks. "Let's go out for dinner tonight," I said. "Somewhere nice, not takeout, not cooking at home, a real restaurant." Mira's face went pale. "I don't know, Liam. That's a lot of people." "I'll be right there with you," I promised. "We can leave anytime you want." She hesitated for a long time. I could see the fear in her eyes. But then she took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll try." That evening, we went to a small Italian restaurant downtown. It wasn't too crowded. The lighting was dim, intimate. We got a table in the corner, away from most people. At first, everything was fine. We ordered food, we talked, we laughed. Mira was nervous, but she was doing well. I was so proud of her. Then I noticed three guys at the table next to us. They were young, maybe in their early 20s, loud, drunk. One of them kept glancing over at Mira. Then he nudged his friend and whispered something. They both looked at her and started laughing. My stomach dropped. Mira noticed. Her whole body tensed. Then the first guy spoke, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Yo, is she cosplaying Two-Face or something?" His friends burst out laughing. Mira's breathing became rapid, panicked. Her hands were shaking. She was staring down at her plate, frozen. I felt rage boiling inside me. I started to stand up, but Mira grabbed my hand tightly. "Don't," she whispered urgently. "Please, let's just go." "Mira, please, for me." Her voice was breaking. She was on the verge of tears. I sat back down and quickly called for the check. The guys were still laughing behind us, making more comments. I wanted to say something, to defend her, to make them shut up. But Mira just wanted to leave. We walked out quickly. She didn't say a word. The drive home was silent, painful. When we got to her apartment building, she finally spoke. "Do you feel embarrassed?" she asked quietly. I looked at her, confused. "What? When you're seen with me, do you feel embarrassed?" "Mira, no, of course not. Because if my appearance makes your life harder, if it makes you uncomfortable," she took a shaky breath. "We can stop this, right here, right now." I was shocked. "Mira, I don't care what those idiots said. I care," she said, her voice rising. "I care because I saw your face in there. You were angry. You wanted to fight them. I was angry for you. And I don't want you to have to fight for me. I don't want to be a burden." Tears were streaming down her face now. Hushed out. I think we should take a break." "Mira, please." But she was already getting out of the car. She walked to her building entrance without looking back. The door closed behind her, and I just sat there, stunned, heartbroken. Mira disappeared after that night. 1 week passed. Then 2 days more. No texts, no calls, nothing. I tried messaging her every day. "Are you okay? Please just let me know you're safe. I'm not giving up on you." No response. I drove to her apartment every single day. I'd knock softly on her door, not too loud. I didn't want to scare her. "Mira, it's me," I'd say. "You don't have to open the door. You don't have to talk to me. Just let me know you're okay." Silence. Sometimes I'd stand there for 10 minutes, waiting, hoping, but the door never opened. On the third day, I started leaving notes under her door. Short ones at first. I'm here whenever you're ready. Then longer ones. You're not a burden. You never were. I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. Still no response. By the fifth day, I was getting desperate. I left a longer letter. Mira, I know you're scared. I know you think I'll leave eventually, but I won't. What happened at that restaurant wasn't your fault. Those guys were cruel and ignorant. I was angry at them, not because of you, but for you. Because you deserve respect. You deserve kindness. You deserve to exist in this world without being mocked. Please don't shut me out. I slid it under the door and waited. Nothing. On the eighth day, I was sitting in my car outside her building. I didn't know what else to do. I felt helpless, lost. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mira. You can come up if you still want to. My heart jumped. I rushed to her door, knocked gently. She opened it slowly. I barely recognized her. Her eyes were dark and hollow, like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was messy. Her face was pale. She looked so small, so fragile. She didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let me in. I walked in carefully. The apartment was dark, curtains drawn. She went back to the couch and sat in the corner, knees pulled up to her chest. I sat down beside her, not too close, giving her space. I'm sorry, she whispered finally. You don't need to apologize. I do. I pushed you away. I always push people away when things get hard. Her voice was shaking. I was so scared in that restaurant, Liam. Not just because of what they said, but because I saw the look on your face. What look? You wanted to protect me. You wanted to fight for me. And I realized, if you stay with me, you'll have to do that over and over again for the rest of your life. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. People will always stare, they'll always whisper, they'll always make comments, and you'll always have to defend me. Choose me. Stand by me. She looked at me with broken eyes. I'm scared I'll make your life harder, that I'll drag you down with me. She wiped her face roughly. So I thought, maybe it's better if I let you go now, before you get too attached, before it hurts too much. Her whole body was trembling. I'm scared of making you ashamed, Liam. I felt my own eyes burning with tears. This was the deepest pain I'd ever seen in anyone, and I knew exactly what I needed to say. Mira looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Then she asked the question that would change everything. Liam, does appearance still matter to you? Her voice was barely a whisper. I stood up slowly. Then I knelt down on the floor in front of her, eye level with her. I needed her to see my face when I said this, to know I meant every single word. Yes, I said. Appearance matters to me. She flinched, started to pull away, but I gently took her hands, but not in the way you think. I took a deep breath. When I look at you, Mira, I don't see what they see. I don't see something broken or damaged or ugly. I touched the scarred side of her face softly. I see a story of survival, of courage, of selflessness. She was crying harder now. I see a 17-year-old girl who ran into a burning building to save her little sister, who sacrificed her own body to protect someone she loved. My own voice was shaking. I see someone who survived the worst night of her life and kept going, who learned to paint again, who learned to smile again, who learned to trust again, even after someone broke her heart. I wiped the tears from both sides of her face. Your scars aren't ugly to me, Mira. They're beautiful. They're proof that you're strong, that you're brave, that you're here. She was sobbing now, deep, painful sobs. When I look at your face, I see someone who chose love over fear, who chose her sister's life over her own comfort, who chose to keep living even when the world was cruel to her. I held her face gently in both hands. So yes, appearance matters to me, because when I look at you, I see the most beautiful person I've ever met, not despite your scars, but including them, because they're part of your story, and your story is incredible. Mira collapsed forward into my arms. She buried her face in my chest and cried like I'd never heard anyone cry before. Years of pain, years of shame, years of believing she was unlovable, all coming out at once. I held her tightly, let her cry. Didn't say anything. After a long time, she finally spoke, her voice muffled against my shirt. I'm so scared, Liam. Of what? That everyone will leave me eventually. That no matter how much I try, I'll always be alone. That I'll never be enough. I pulled back just enough to look at her. I'm not going anywhere, I said firmly. Not because I'm trying to be some hero. Not because I feel sorry for you. I smiled softly. I'm staying because I genuinely, truly care about you, because you make me laugh, because you see the world in ways I never could, because when I'm with you, I feel less alone. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Because you're worth staying for, not despite who you are, but exactly because of who you are. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they looked different, less painful, more relieved. You really mean that? She whispered. Every word. She wrapped her arms around me and held on like she was afraid to let go. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for seeing me. We stayed like that for a long time, two broken people, finding healing in each other. Everything changed after that night. Slowly, carefully, but it changed. Mira started letting me see her without any mask at all. No barriers, no hiding. She'd answer the door with her face completely bare. No makeup, no scarves, just her, and every time I'd smile, because I was seeing the real her. We started going out more during the day, not to crowded places yet, but small steps, a quiet park in the afternoon, a bookstore on a weekday morning, a coffee shop during off hours. Some people still stared, some still whispered, but Mira didn't run anymore. She'd hold my hand tighter, take a deep breath, and keep walking. She was learning that she had just as much right to exist in the world as anyone else. One afternoon, she invited me into her art room, the one she usually kept locked. I'd never been inside before. The walls were covered with paintings, old ones, new ones, unfinished sketches, but in the center of the room, on her easel, was something different, a self-portrait. Not of how she used to look, but of how she looked now. The painting showed her face clearly, both sides, the scars rendered in careful, honest detail. But there was something else in the painting too. Peace, acceptance, strength. I painted this last week, she said quietly. After you left that night. She walked closer to it. I've been avoiding painting myself for years. I couldn't stand looking at my own face. But then I realized something. She turned to look at me. You helped me see myself differently. Not as something broken, but as someone who survived, someone who's still here. I stared at the painting. It was stunning. Can I keep it? I asked. She looked surprised. You want it? Of course I do, if you're willing to part with it. She smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. If you want to look at me every day, then yes, you can have it. I walked over and pulled her into a hug. She wrapped her arms around me and rested her head against my chest. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For loving both parts of me, the beautiful parts and the painful parts, the easy parts and the hard parts. I kissed the top of her head. That's what real love is, Mira. It's not about perfection. It's about seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Happy tears this time. I choose you too, Liam. We stood there in her art room, surrounded by her paintings, holding each other. Two people who had been told they weren't enough. Two people who had been rejected for how they looked. Two people who found each other and learned that love isn't about appearance, it's about connection, understanding, acceptance. It's about seeing someone's scars and recognizing them as proof of survival, as proof of strength, as proof that they're still standing. Mira started going to therapy. She started painting more. She started believing she deserved happiness. And I was there for all of it, not as her savior, but as her partner, someone who saw her, truly saw her, and loved everything he saw. 6 months later, that self-portrait still hangs in my apartment, right where I can see it every morning. A reminder that beauty isn't about perfection, it's about truth. And Mira's truth is the most beautiful thing I've ever known. If this story touched you, hit follow so you won't miss the next one.